And then you get a few reps under your belt of like a few, and maybe a few teams, maybe a few different projects, and you start to realize, like it doesn't always work as I was trained.
Hmm.
Yes, and yay. Oh my gosh, like welcome to the party.
So, Mike, you have brought out some things that is kind of a shift in the way people are kind of considering themselves as agile practitioners, or at least how I've grown up, right? Agile practitioner, someone who's done the Scrum way, the practical way. They get all the
Yeah.
certifications and all that jazz. How has this shift, you think, has impacted agile practitioners, especially for those who've built their careers around a specific agile framework? Um, what are kind of your thoughts around that?
Well, it's lowercase-a agility, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I, and look, I own a company that sells training. That's the big A. I'll teach you how to do it. Like you have to know that. But we all, over time, as agile practitioners, we sort of outgrow the big A shackles of any framework and go, no, I just am more adaptive now.
Mm-hmm.
I can look at something and go, well, if you, for example, like if let's say we have a Scrum team and they've decided that they want to skip sprint review. Okay, well, just tell me, why do you skip sprint review? Well, because we actually demo our product every day to our product owner after the daily Scrum, and then she gives me her feedback in a Slack channel, and we don't. So when we get, by the time we get to sprint review, she already knows exactly what we've done. Okay, that's lowercase a agility. And so people like me wouldn't be like, well, the Scrum Guide says you need to do a sprint review, and if you don't, you're not doing Scrum. Really? Nonsense.
Uh-huh.
Hogwash. That's just a bunch of nonsense. If a team has figured out a better way to do stuff,
Uh-huh.
like the profit margins is where the answers are. Show me that.
All
Oh,
right.
wow,
You're
you built
you're
a product
testing
and
me here. Okay.
you're bringing in
Okay.
value. Let's do it. Like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So all that to say, like, I'm not against anyone just following Scrum by the book. But I just eventually you're going to mature past it. Or Kanban. Like Kanban is a wonderful, wonderful way to implement flow-based, approaches to delivering products. Well, big fan. Um, and there's certain rules that bound that, but we need to be mature enough to go like, when do we sort of bend these things and
Mm-hmm.
try new things? And that's lowercase agility. And that's what the market shift we're seeing is. The frameworks are okay for uppercase A agility, but they only get you so far. They only get you so far. You have to mature past that to become an adaptive organization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm answering that question or just dodging it really as best I can.
I think you bring up food for thought for people. I think where, someone like me struggles, you saw me grimace a little bit about the response from Slack, is that sometimes the response on Slack is not the full answer that the team needs. And so when they
Sure.
keep
Yeah.
building, right? And then later, like, oh, well, I really didn't mean that. And it's like, if they had been there with, the way that people's lives are really busy, I need your full undivided attention. And sending you something via email or Slack, I'm not always guaranteed that you really looked at it. But it also speaks to the point of, if we are mature enough, we've come to the agreement, and you're not ideally, right, giving your product owner this huge demo or increment, but you're giving her something to be able to react to for that particular item. That should be something that's manageable enough for her to give you good feedback on what the team has produced. I think sometimes with the teams I've worked with, they do too much, one. So I got to
Mm,
bring them back. And then
yeah.
two, the product owners are part-time product owners, and
True.
they're also
Oh,
overwhelmed with their other responsibilities, so they're kind of half looking at what was it's just a check, they got it done. I trust the team, right? The Agile Manifesto says trust the team, so I'm not
I
really looking at it the way I'm supposed to. So that's why I'm like, no, no, I need you in the room because I don't trust you. I don't trust us.
Absolutely. And let's just keep that scenario going. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're like, oh my gosh, we could never get there. Okay, but I didn't say like skip your retrospective.
Mhm.
Okay, so wouldn't that come up at least 10 days from
Mm,
now? Wouldn't it? Like, look, if
touche.
we're all experts at Scrum, then I
Mhm.
should be able to talk in a way that says you should know Scrum then. So then clearly that's going to come up in your retrospective. Now, if you're skipping review and skipping retro and skipping the daily Scrum and skipping your planning sessions, well, I don't know what you're doing. But at some point, like I'm just saying, if you violate the Scrum guide and do it intentionally, I don't care. In fact, I'm probably going to give you a high five because you've matured past it.
Sadly, people are skipping all those meetings.
Well, you can't skip them all and be like, why doesn't it work? What? Like you hired me to be your physical trainer, but you're eating fudge every night. What?
I'm
I
not
don't.
doing the workouts. I'm not
What do
drinking
you?
water.
Right. I'm just, but I do like fudge. I do like fudge
You know
actually.
what?
But anyway,
That's a great analogy. I might have to steal that though. But that's a
yeah,
really good analogy. Is like if you don't do what you're supposed to with the training, to at least right get a habit. And I think that's really
yeah,
what you are trying to tie together for people is that when you work with the trainer, you get the foundation, right? You get the
that's
groundwork
right.
of what it requires or what it helps you to just be better to start building those habits. And when you get mature enough, instead of working out with your trainer at 6 in the morning, you are still keeping up with the workouts, but you found that it's much
That's
better for
right.
you to do it 6 in the afternoon. And
Yeah,
I think that's really what it gets to, because some people tend to be very um very particular, right? They hold on tight to the rules and then you're violating the
oh
rules.
yeah.
um but then that's where a coach could help, right? What are your
Maybe
thoughts? Uh-huh.
that's a great observation. I mean, the Scrum Master who is newly minted and certified with say, like the ICP from IC Agile as one example of a certification agency. Well, she's got now the sort of fundamental understandings of how these things work. And then you get a few reps under your belt of like a few and maybe a few teams, maybe a few different projects, and you start to realize, like it doesn't always work as I was trained.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and yay. Oh my gosh, like welcome to the party. It's true. Like, when I earned my PMP, I remember working on a multi-year program for the state of Colorado, and I was trying to study and pass my PMP at the time, and but I remember like there's some stuff that I would read, and then I would be at work as a project manager going, oh my gosh, these two things are like they're different. They're not sort of orthogonal to each other. There wasn't that, but it was like, I had to just hold it in tension in my brain. But that taught
Mm-hmm.
me a lot. It taught me a lot. It taught me that like big scale, multi-million dollar programs are not always going to be following the PMBOK, rules. And that's okay. Like you have to hold that stuff in tension. It just comes with experience, I think.
Yeah. And I think too, for a lot of us, and I think that's the other thing with, not only getting training in agile and the PMP, a lot of us got into the work just throwing us in and we didn't have the
Mm,
context. And I think where it's valuable to get the training of what's better practice, right, is that it
yes.
just gives you tools for your
Yeah,
toolbox. Right. It just gets like, oh, you know
absolutely.
what? We've been struggling with this. So even with like all the documents that we learn about in predictive project management, and people say, nobody has time for that. And it's like, absolutely. They're not saying you have to produce all these tools, but instead, each and every one of these documents, just like with the ceremonies that we have in Agile, they answer or address a specific project
Yeah,
challenge.
that's right.
So, like with the retro, right? If that's a great meeting to have that checkpoint of saying, is this review effective? But if you
Right.
skip that and skip that and skip that, you'll never really know. And so, like, one of the true story, I will not name them, but I worked with a local chapter, PMI chapter,
Uh,
on an event, and they were like trying to figure out who was on point to do what. Well, who's assigned to do this? Who's this? Everybody has to PMP. And, I didn't want to be
Right.
that person, but I'm
Is
like,
there a tool for that?
where's your RACI chart?
Use a
Like,
racing document,
oh my
would you?
God, where's your RACI chart? They were like, well, who's assigned to this? I'm like, you guys are
That's
killing me.
funny. That's
And it's,
well,
it's,
I, we are a bit of our own worst critics though, aren't we? Like I joke like I have too much work in progress all the time. And then I'll be telling people, if you just reduce your WIP, your lead times will go down. What kinds of worst? I'm just
so
terrible at
true.
it.
I have a project manager for my business. Every project manager needs a project manager,
Isn't
right?
that
Like
right?
a barber has his own barber. So
Love it. That's brilliant. Yeah, so no wonder there was no one knew who was responsible, accountable. But,
exactly.
I don't
But I
know.
did not want to
Somebody,
be that person. I'm like, no, I'm too new. I'm not going
yeah,
there.
going. Well, then you'll end up doing it. Is what is you'll do it. That's what happens.
That really was the reason.
I don't want any extra work. I'm trying to limit my whip. Didn't you just hear me?
Hey, there's more to this episode, so stay tuned for the next part. If you enjoyed this portion of the episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Follow us on social media for updates and more insights into the world of project management. Thanks so much and stay tuned for the next episode.